Dr. Devynne here, owner and one of the practicing doctors of acupuncture and Chinese medicine here at Jing Shen Healing Arts. Wanted to take time here to share a little bit more about my story and my journey with acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Dr. James and I have been doing some recording here for a bit of time, and depending on how you're following along in our journeys, we're still in early conversations, but we realize the importance of us being able to share how we got here and why we do what we do. And yeah, I just wanted to casually sit down and share that, and we'll see where it goes. I have been practicing for this year, as I'm recording this, is my 10th year in practice. My first year of treating clinical patients was in 2015 during my clinical residency of acupuncture school. And if you take out a small gap in there for studying for board exams, getting practicing, this makes 10 years in practice. And it's a beautiful medicine that I love getting to share with people. It's been quite a journey. I've been able to meet a lot of really wonderful and amazing people through my work and do a lot of really awesome things. One of the questions that I get asked all the time is, how did you get into acupuncture? I just want to share a little bit more of that story and kind of put some pieces together, put some timelines together, and yeah, share my journey with you. So I was first introduced to acupuncture. I was in middle school, late middle school, early high school. Growing up, I was a softball player. So I played fast pitch softball competitively from the time that I was 9 all the way up through my first couple years of college. And so I was always pretty healthy on the field. I always felt like I did a really good job balancing the intensity of training and practice with recovery. I used a lot of massage therapy, a lot of chiropractic to keep me healthy, keep me on the field, all of those good things. But about that time of my life, middle school, high school, I had a couple nagging injuries that I just couldn't get right with Western medicine. And so the advice that was given to me by doctors was stay off of it, ice it, ibuprofen, Advil, Aleve, some form of just pain reliever. And come to find out, what I was experiencing was tendonitis. So my injuries that I would experience while playing ball were always overuse injuries. Anybody who knows me personally, that probably won't be a surprise. But rest is really the only thing that Western medical system advises for tendonitis. You have to stop working the thing that you're overworking. And I did that. We took some time off, a couple periods where I even ended up on crutches to take pressure off of day-to-day movement. And every time I would get back on my feet, the pain would start up again. And so we were in a place where we're just trying to figure out as a family, right? Like what else can we try? And one of the things that we decided to try was acupuncture. We were living in Florida at the time. There was a school in Orlando that had a student clinic attached to it. And so we ended up over there and tried it and had a really great experience with it. I think at the time I didn't really know what I was in for. My brain went acupuncture, needles. I don't understand how this is going to help, but let's try it. I was entering a time where we start thinking a little more heavily about getting recruited for college and big tournaments and important tournaments and such. And it was important to me that I got healthy and got back on the field and got to do the things that I wanted to do. So that was my intro to acupuncture, was through a physical injury to my foot that I just couldn't get right with Western medicine. Through my time with that school in Orlando, I had 2 treatments and I had 0 pain, and it never really came back. I was able to move through that, as well as that kind of looped the acupuncture in for me for staying healthy as well. And so it just became this maintenance thing that I did to keep me playing and doing what I love doing. Like I said, that was my initial exposure What I didn't know at the time is that there were different styles of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Dr. James, who I run Jing Shen Healing Arts with, is my dad. And I think at the time, he didn't really know that there were different styles either. It was just acupuncture's acupuncture. And we knew that what I was experiencing worked. And so that was that. Fast forward quite a few years, somewhere along the way, and I'm sure James will tell his story someday. He ended up in acupuncture school. He ended up in massage school, practiced massage for a while, ended up in acupuncture school. And it was through that journey that we learned that there were just different styles of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. The school that he ended up deciding to study at was the Academy for Five Element Acupuncture in Gainesville, Florida. And it's just a different experience, which I'll get to here in a minute. And so that was happening while I was also in college. So I got a scholarship to play softball in college. And my sophomore year, I ended up tearing my shoulder and knew I was going to need to have surgery to repair the damage. And in the spirit of calling in all things that I know are helpful, I decided to pursue getting more treatment leading up to my surgery with the hopes for a smooth surgery, faster recovery, all of those types of things. And as I mentioned, that was concurrently happening with James being in school. And we now are learning that there are different viewpoints and aspects to acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And so my curiosity was piqued around he's obviously studying what he's studying. We spend a lot of time having conversations about life, and I loved the conversations that we were having about what he was learning in school. And so we got through that. I was like, let's come up here. And I went up to that student clinic. It was a little bit farther from me at the time, but let me drive up here and experience this. I love the philosophy that it feels like it's bringing. I'm really enjoying the conversation. And let's use this as a experience for getting my shoulder as prepped as possible for what I was about to go through. So I did. I probably did about 6, maybe 8 weeks of treatment leading up to my surgery, had the surgery, and got back into treatment as soon as I could on the other side of that, which was probably within a couple weeks, a week or two. And it did exactly what we wanted it to do and more. And so in that, it was great. On a physical level, I went through surgery really well. There was more damage than they saw on the imaging, and so it was a bigger repair than they anticipated, but the surgery went great. I was on pain meds for a single day, and then I felt pretty good. I was able to start physical therapy early. When I started physical therapy, I hit markers way faster than they were anticipating and got released from PT much quicker than they had projected. And so that was a really cool experience and is right in alignment with my previous experience with acupuncture, just being really helpful for setting things right and just feeling good. So that in itself was a really cool experience. But I from the time I started getting treatment, we call the Academy for Five Element Acupuncture, we shorten to AFIA, or we just call the Academy. But my experience with the Academy was different. The first couple treatments that I had in this classical five element style was different. It took me a long time to put words to what I was experiencing and what I felt, and even connecting it to the acupuncture that I was receiving. But from the first couple treatments that I had, I felt as if my world was coming into focus. I never really felt like I struggled with who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. I was always had very clear vision about what I wanted to do and what I was going to study in school and how I was going to do it. And very confident and sure of myself and just felt really good in that front. But in those early treatments, I had an experience of feeling like I was being introduced to myself for the first time, which is wild and mind trippy for someone who didn't really feel bad to begin with. There's probably a lot more details that will get to come out through some conversation with Dr. James, but I that was probably the biggest feeling that I had, and I didn't know it at the time. I just knew that I felt different. I knew there was just this sense of feeling like me, which is an interesting statement to say when you didn't not feel like yourself. And everything in my life from that point forward started to fall over in dominoes. And I had some people in my life at the time that probably should not have been around. And there was a lot of clarity in that. Not only clarity, but I think the self assurance that I could make different choices and that I could make different decisions about who was in my life and what I wanted that to look like. And so I did. So it was a recognition, but it was also actionary that dominoed some other things. I also began having a lot of questions and wonders about the career path that I was choosing. At the time, I was in school studying exercise science. I was working towards my undergrad and was actively in the process of applying for an exercise science program at the University of Florida. And sports was all I knew growing up. I loved it. I could not have imagined doing anything different with my life. And that was what I knew. That was what I wanted from the time that I was little. And there was this sense of, I would have loved it. And I believe that we own a gym now, which is a whole other conversation. I would have loved it, but I don't think I would have been passionate about it. And that was the sense that I had. And then next thing you know, there was a curiosity and a wonder and a draw towards acupuncture school. None of it made any sense to me at the time. It was not on the radar. It was not, it feels weird to say this, but it was not oh, acupuncture did this for me. And so I want to be able to do this for other people. There was just this deeper sense that was my next step. And what was tricky about that is at the time I was 19, 20, I was pursuing my associate's degree so that I could get into, as I mentioned, my program at the University of Florida. And acupuncture school is a graduate field of study. And so we started exploring, is it even possible for me to get into graduate school, basically a year and a half, 2 years into college? And thankfully, I had enough credits. I had enough of the right credits because of what I was studying. And I needed 1 or 2 summer classes. And as long as I could complete those and pass those, I would get accepted into graduate school. And so I went straight from my undergrad straight into grad school. And yeah, the rest is history as far as studying, but it was quite an experience of getting treated. I think a lot of people end up in this field because of their experience, but my connection to the medicine has been very beautiful on both ends of the spectrum. And how I personally have chalked up my own story is that the first style that I was introduced to is TCM. It's traditional Chinese medicine. It is a more, as I've studied and am now practicing, learned that TCM is a more westernized version of Chinese medicine. And it did wonders. It worked and it put me back together physically, kept me healthy, did all the things that I know that it can do. But the classical five element that I was introduced to and also chose to study for myself felt like it introduced me to myself and put me on path with what I'm supposed to be doing. And so those are the two spaces that I hold for it. Neither is more right nor wrong, but I think if I would not have been introduced to Five Element Acupuncture, I'm not sure that I would be practicing because that was not the feeling that I got from those treatments. It was cool and it was great and it did its job, but there's just something different about how we've chosen to study. That's a little bit of my story of how I got into acupuncture school or how I decided to pursue acupuncture. I It's interesting because I am in a place, I think, in my career where we make a joke all the time around the office that I am now old enough to have the job that I have and to have the career that I have. But when people ask how long I've been practicing, the math doesn't add up. As we've started doing more recording for Shen Shenanigans and some other projects, I have been trying to find a way to take time and space to chat through that, not from a place of let me prove to you why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the timeline is interesting, and the having a career in acupuncture and Chinese medicine from early on is been an interesting journey. I ended up so my journey with school, am the second youngest person to ever go through the academy, or I was at the time. I don't know if that has changed, but I was able to start grad school at 20. Our graduate program is a 4-year program squeezed into 3 years, and so that accelerates the timeline a little bit. And then after getting started and practicing, when I decided to go back and get my doctorate, that program was also a 2.5, 3-year course that I did in about a year and a half. So there's a lot of accelerated timelines, which probably tells you a lot about my personality. But the field of study, all the hours and the classes, it's all there. I've just been fortunate enough to do it at a different period of time in my life, and I'm glad that I've had the chance to do it. Yeah, so I just wanted to share a little bit more of my story of how I ended up in acupuncture school, where that journey has been, and I'm sure there will be more conversation to come, both from myself and from Dr. James. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, drop them somewhere, depending on where this video ends up. And yeah, look forward to talking more soon.